everyone. My name is Mircea Rugină, and today this is going to be the first showing of lessons I learned as a DevOps consultant the hard way. So I'm going to try to take you through some of my experience that I had in the past 10 years as a DevOps, as a sysadmin, as a consultant in general with all the clients that I've worked with. And we'll try to share some technical lessons I learned and also some non-technical lessons. And towards the end, I'm hoping to interact with you as well. So if you spot something that I might have missed, a lesson that you learned and that may be valuable for everyone here, I will invite you to share. So let's start with the short table of contents. You're not going to see a lot of text from me. You're not going to see a lot of technical details, just a couple of pictures, and I'm going to try to speak and tell you exactly how I felt in those moments, what I did, and how I solved the challenges that I faced. So there's a short intro with about me, where you're going to learn who I am, what I like to do. Lessons learned, a short recap, and then the Q&A session where I mentioned before that we are going to try to also share some experience if you're up for it. So I've been working in the IT industry for more than 12 years. I started out as a support engineer, and I've worked my way up to a DevOps engineer, and now I'm a senior manager at Deloitte ERDC, delivering projects for clients all around the world. I'm a sports enthusiast. You're going to see me at Aero Squash, I don't know, if, playing squash or playing tennis. I love playing board games, and I'm an avid sci-fi and fantasy reader. You're going to see a lot of quotes. One of them is from my favorite fantasy writer. I also like to network, and not just cloud networking, it's networking that you do in real life. So if you want to catch up and you want to exchange ideas, feel free to come up to me afterwards. So let's start. Let's start with the first lesson. I think everyone is aware of this. Everyone has faced this sometime during their career. Every project starts out with teams. Big projects start out with full-feature teams, so you're going to see teams that have everyone in it. So back-end developers, front-end developers, DevOps engineers, QA engineers, and everyone will have something that they need to deliver by the end of the project. I'm going to start with a quote from Phil Jackson. You may know him as being a coach for two of the greatest NBA teams and two of the greatest players that have played the game. But what I also recommend from Phil is a book that's called 11 Rings, where he took all the lessons that he gathered during his years at those fantastic teams and put the lessons and told everyone how to use them in a management and in company. So the strength of the team is in each individual member, and the strength of each member is the team. But that doesn't mean we have to work in silos. And that's why I think that it's very, very important when you start out a project, or even if you're joining a project that started a couple of months ago, you need to work out and understand that silos don't help anyone. And that's very important also for DevOps engineers. I can give you some examples of projects I've been on, where I've been in a full-feature team, working with pipelines, working with deploying infrastructure using IAC, so using Terraform, Pulumi, or similar. And you realize that you're doing your task, you're helping your team deliver, but at some point, someone in another team, another DevOps engineer, has done the same thing. Why not reuse that code? Why not have meetings with those people and try to understand what they do? What I do in all the projects I've been on, and I like to do, is a coffee chat. Let's say an open mic session where anyone can join once a week. That's what I recommend. Once a week, an open mic session where anyone can join who has time and who has questions, and we can share our knowledge, share what we're doing inside the infrastructure team, and understand how we create modules, how we can reuse code, how we can template pipelines. So it's very, very important to collaborate and communicate with everyone. So this isn't a very funny story, but this is a very serious one. which I know you've probably seen in a lot of other presentations, but I wanted to start out with this one because I'm seeing this problem in every project I'm on. It's being handled in every project I've been on, but you need to start from the beginning, from the very beginning, collaborating, not having any silos. Cool. I'll move on to the next one, and the next one, it now starts to be more funny, more interesting, with more technical experience. And one which is probably not very obvious is expect anything. When it comes to infrastructure, when it comes to cloud providers, when it comes to tools that you're using. And Brandon Sanderson, as I mentioned, is one of my favorite fantasy writers. So expectations are like fine pottery, right? So you have to be very, very careful with your expectations. And I'm going to give you a very good example of that. I've worked with 3 cloud providers, and I'm starting to work with the 4th one in my free time. In all of them, I work with different types of architectures. Microservice-based architecture, you'll see that it's very popular. We're going to touch on that a bit later on. But we're using Kubernetes on the project I'm talking about. And this happened, I think, 2 weeks ago, so it's very recent. I already had experience with working with Kubernetes, managed Kubernetes in a cloud provider, which I will not mention. And what happened? One of our colleagues had to do some changes at Terraform level, so he had to write some new policies and groups, but also made some changes seeing that the naming convention did not apply, so the other policies and groups were not aligned and needed to be changed, and that means Terraform will take that resource, destroy it, and recreate it. This whole process takes only at a maximum of 20 seconds, I think. What happened is that after he did this change, the Kubernetes clusters stopped working altogether. But policies are just policies, right? So we did not touch the Kubernetes clusters at all. We started investigating what's happening. We can't reach the Kube API. It's down. How does that happen, right? It's a managed service. It's not something that you yourself manage. We did some digging and some more digging, and we contacted support, obviously, because we needed support in order for some help. Support told us that those policies that we recreated don't exist, which obviously wasn't true. They were recreated. And told us the problem is that those policies allow the Kubernetes clusters to use the KMS keys that they would need for encryption. And because they're not there, it's a problem. And they had to automatically scale down the control plane. And they sent us an email. Obviously, that email went to a person in the business of the client, a business person from the client, that he gave us the mail a bit later. So it took some time. All in all, we didn't have to do any other change. We just had to convince support that they can scale the cluster back up, and they did. But that took around 18 hours. And that's 18 hours of a project that needs to be delivered. And yeah, you're blocking developers, you're blocking DevOps engineers, testers, you're blocking absolutely everyone. So the lesson I learned from here is that you have to expect anything. So this hasn't happened with the other cloud providers I worked on. This is a first. We weren't expecting this. We were asked, why didn't you test? Why didn't you? But we didn't know. So, but you should expect anything. And that's the very valuable lesson that you have to learn from this one. It can be Kubernetes, it can be something else tomorrow, but you can always have issues, you can always have surprises, and they can affect, especially when you're talking about DevOps and infrastructure and platform engineering. When something is down, you're blocking all the other teams. So that's an issue. So you have to be very, very careful what you're changing and how you're changing. And try to test everything. And right now, what we're doing in order to ensure that in the future we don't have similar issues is building another account with absolutely all the policies, all the dynamic groups, everything that's needed. And when we do test, we test there first. So even though we have a main account grouped by projects with sub-accounts, we still need this one because we're not able to test. And this may affect production in the future if there's a similar surprise. So expect anything, and don't be surprised if something breaks. Another very important lesson that I think we all need to learn during our career is that you have to not get stuck on just one tool, one technology. You need to keep learning, right? You're not going to be, it's a fast-moving industry, right? You're not going to be an AWS, let's say, cloud engineer for your whole life. That's just one tool doesn't cut it, right? Or just one infrastructure as code tool, or just one pipelines tool. And this is a quote for Henry Ford that tells you that you never stop learning. And especially as a DevOps, the tool stack is humongous. It's absolutely huge, right? Because it's not just one tool for configuration management. It's not just one tool for pipelines. It's several tools. And working at Deloitte, working for a consulting company, you're going to see that that's one thing you need to do. You need to learn several tools. I've been at Deloitte on 6 projects, and I say that in all interviews. In each and every project, I had a different CI/CD tool. Each and every client chose something different. So this might happen. And what we're looking for is to try to diversify. Are you willing to learn? Are you willing to not go just with AWS, but learn some Azure? Maybe learn some OCI. Maybe that's going to help you in the future. So you need to have the basics. You need to understand what a cloud provider is, what operating systems are and how they work, what infrastructure as code tools are, how they work, what are the alternatives, right? It's not just Terraform, it may be Pulumi, it may be some other tool that we haven't met yet. So even though you're going to see that there are a lot of tools here, for sure you're going to find the tool that I missed. There's absolutely no way to know what all the tools that a DevOps uses somewhere on another continent are. So you have to be very, very careful and try not to get stuck on one tool. So if someone says, I have a really nice project, I have a really nice personal project, let's say, but it's in Azure. I have all the modules, I have everything that's ready, all the pipelines. Do you want to help me implement it? Then let's play with it. No, I only work with AWS, I only have experience with AWS. That's not the way to go. And that's what we also ask from anyone who wants to work with us. Are you willing to learn another cloud provider? Are you willing to learn another CI/CD tool? And the answer should be yes, because this is going to help you develop and grow in your career. Another hard-learned lesson is that assumptions are the mother of rework. And I looked for quotes. I didn't find one. So I put a quote for myself. So from my experience with projects, never assume. Never assume you understand or know what the client wants. You need to put it on paper, right? Confluence, Jira, not really paper. And ask him, are you okay with these? Are you okay with the acceptance criteria? Are you okay with what's in scope? What's out of scope? You need to do that. Or else, you're going to find that after you did the work, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 2 months, 3 months, that's bad. Later, you're going to see that the client did not want this. The client wanted a totally different solution, right? And you're going to have to do rework. And that's an issue. So gather your requirements. Be very, very specific in the requirements. The project I'm on has this issue right now. We've had this issue in the past. And we miss deadlines, because that's it. That's the problem, right? You're missing deadlines because the client says, oh, you're implementing ICA here, but you didn't implement templating for certificates. You didn't implement RBAC, and we need it in this release, not in the next one. And you have to replan. You have to talk to the client. You have to understand what are his expectations. And let's say that the lessons that I've learned can work together as well. So this one can work very good with the first lesson, that you have to collaborate and talk to everyone. So it's not just the requirements of your product owner, who is the infrastructure product owner, but the requirements from security. They have requirements, and they're usually very, very particular about them. requirements from development teams, so from feature teams, requirements from testing. So you have to ask everyone, what are your requirements? How does this solution help you? If it doesn't, perfect, but we know that. And another very, very interesting fact, so we're going to go back to microservices. The popular tool is not always the right one. It may not be right for your use case. You're going to hear buzzwords all the time in the IT industry. There's always a new buzzword. So that's why when you're using solutions that are popular, you have to be very careful and analyze before you start working on them. Is it right for you? Is it right for the client? And when you analyze it, it's not just, is it easy to use? Is it cost effective? Is it scalable? Is it highly available? Are there any compliance restrictions that you have to take care of? And I think the best example that I have in the projects I've been on is microservice architecture versus serverless architecture. Kubernetes and microservices right now are two big, big, big buzzwords. You're going to see that everyone wants to use microservices. Everyone wants to have everything in pods. There are a lot of pros, there are a lot of cons. So I'm not dissing microservices. I'm not saying it's not a good solution. It's great, but does it fit your needs? So in Deloitte, we usually propose several types of architectures when we go to our clients. Depending on the needs, depending on the use cases, depending on the clients we've had in the past with similar solutions working in the same industry. And we have obviously a lot of the clients that choose the microservice-based, but there are a lot of other use cases where you can use serverless. And we implemented serverless solutions for several clients in AWS, because that was the use case, that's what they preferred. Do you really need microservices if you have a static HTMLs that you can store in a bucket somewhere? Can you replace it with a serverless API gateway from AWS? Can you replace, I don't know, logging with Cognito from AWS? If yes, then maybe you should go sort serverless. If you have an API gateway, if you have LDAP, you can use Lambda functions. Does your application need to be very complex? If it doesn't, and if you can just use an API gateway and Lambdas, so serverless functions, then go with that one. And this is just one example, right? This is one example from, from my experience, sorry. There are other types of architectures. Don't get stuck on one. Like the tools, don't get stuck on AWS, right? Don't get stuck on Kubernetes. It's good, it's a nice to have. You should learn it, you should understand it. You should understand what the pros and cons are, but the cons as well, right? Not the pros. Same for serverless, same for the other types of architectures. Maybe you're going to find a client that needs classic VMs. It can happen, right? There are a lot of clients that are still using VMs. So be very, very careful when choosing the right tool and see what the client needs. And this is another funny one, with obviously a very funny story behind it. Never make changes to production when you're tired. Hard-earned lesson. And the quote is from David Goggins, who is a ultra-marathonist who's been also a SEAL, a Navy SEAL in the US. The quote is, "Don't stop when you're tired, stop when you're done." This doesn't apply to us. So be very, very careful what you do, especially if it's production, right? Because if it's production, you might cause outages, downtime. Clients will not want to use your application in the future. The company might lose money. A lot of bad things can happen in short. And my example is, I was working it was past midnight. I was working with a close friend whom we were working together in the same company. At that time, I was a sysadmin and was handling tasks that, not automated tasks, right? I wasn't a fully fledged DevOps, so everything we did was manual, so we did a lot of maintenance afterwards. Yes, that was 10 years ago. So what we did, we needed to do some maintenance on the database. It was an Oracle database, so it's not easy to manage in general. So if you're tired and you're maybe not paying attention, you can screw it up a lot. And we were working, he was the one working, I was shadowing, we were on the same call, he was sharing his screen, and we did what we had to do, the maintenance work, we did the upgrade, and then we needed to go through the logs, let's see what logs have been generated, let's delete the logs. I just put there a path that's just random, so I don't remember the exact path from 10 years ago. But what my colleague did is use that command with the star at the end, and there weren't just logs. They were redo logs, which are very important for Oracle databases, if you did not know that. Luckily, so he did this, I was like, stop, but I didn't get to stop him. He was like, pre-pressed enter, and the redo logs were deleted. We had like 10 seconds of quiet, no one said anything. What did we do? Oh my God, how are we going to fix this? Luckily, the database was stopped, and we could recreate those redo logs, and the database started up correctly. This took 1 more hour because we were very tired. Once again, we had a full day, and we did this after midnight. Obviously, you can see 3 mistakes in that command straight from the beginning. One of them, you're doing things manually. You shouldn't be doing them manually. The second one, the -rf at the end, sorry, just tells you that you don't, there's no prompt. It's not going to ask you, are you sure you want to delete it? It's going to delete it straight away. It's going to force the deletion. And then the star at the end just deletes everything in that folder. That's the third biggest mistake. And we did this because we were very tired. And you should never make changes to prod if you're tired. Never. Trust me. I've been there. And I think that this is the last lesson which I have for today is embrace change. So everything is changing very, very fast, right? Not just buzzwords, but the industry as well. The tools that we're using, the companies, the clients, everything is moving very fast. So you have to be very, very careful to embrace it. Don't push back. Don't say, I'm not doing this, I don't want to do this role, I don't want to learn this tool, I don't want to do in general. You need to embrace change. You need to understand what clients need and what you need as well to grow. And I've used my experience here and how I move from one role to another, and not necessarily how I move from one role to another, but what the buzzwords were, what the roles were. So I started in 2010 as a support engineer, working with Oracle databases and Solaris operating system. If anyone is still using Solaris, I don't remember how to use it. I moved on to a sysadmin role where, like I said, we made a lot of changes manually. We worked on Linux servers, we worked on VMs in VMware, we worked on servers that were hosted in our database. So everything was on-prem. We started working with AWS along the way and started having scripts and automating things, so less manual work. And then I moved on as a DevOps engineer, where DevOps in general as a practice, so not necessarily as a role, but as the ways of working, started to be more important. You needed to understand what's infrastructure as code, what's configuration management, and do everything as code. 2020 moved very fast, and then we have the age of DevSecOps, where more and more security tools are being implemented. You're going to see CNAP, PAM, a lot of security tools that the DevOps are going to work with that we need. And it's not just DevSecOps, it's not just security and what you can do at the pipeline level, it's DevDataOps, right? So it's a lot of roles. You need to embrace the change. We started implementing streaming, Kafka. I haven't worked with those in 2010, 2012, haven't even heard, didn't even imagine that how the industry was going to move forward. And in 2023, right now, we have AI ops, the new buzzword, right? Using AI in ops to understand how you can, I don't know, make production better. I don't know. We still don't know, right? Because that's the problem. But you need to be there. You need to embrace the change that's coming. You need to understand, can this help you? Perfect. If it can help you, try to find a way to understand it. But get to know it first, right? Don't make a decision beforehand. And we have our short recap of all the lessons that we went through together. So collaboration and communication. No silos, please. Teams need to work together to deliver a project successfully. Expect anything. Anything, absolutely anything can happen in IT, right? You're never going to have the perfect tool that's going to work straight from the beginning. Don't get stuck on just one tool. As a platform engineer, as a DevOps engineer, you need to be flexible. You need to understand how the tools work, what's the difference between them. Can you switch to another tool? So be very careful and try to understand that. Never assume what the client wants. You don't want to do any rework. It's tedious. It's tedious for everyone. Try to understand the requirements straight from the get-go and have the client accept them. And that's also very important. The popular tool is not always the best one. Think outside the box. It's not just Kubernetes out there, right? Tell the client, you're an architect, you're a DevOps. I don't think this is the right tool. I think you should be using this one. And why? Don't make changes to production. We all understand why. When you're tired. And embrace change. Everything is moving at a very fast pace. Embrace it. Try to understand how this can help you. And now, the Q&A session. Yes. Yes. That's a very good question, right? So you can avoid it by planning. I think that this is the biggest thing here. You can plan the changes that you need to do. If you need to do an intervention, right? If you're called out in the middle of the night, the pager duty pings you, there's a problem with production, you need to wake up and fix it. But if it's planned work, if it's something that you need to do, plan it accordingly. Don't have a full day of work and then during the night make these changes. Try to rest up a bit. You can take 2-3 hours earlier when you don't need to sleep, right? You can just unwind, but you're not that tired anymore, right? Take some time. If it's planned work, if it's not, there's nothing you can do about it. You have to fix it then and there. Yeah. Exactly. It's better to delay it a bit if you're not sure. And it's the same for driving, right? If you don't have to do it, just stop. Yes, please.
I have a question regarding the incidents that you have with the provider. So what I'm looking into is how to prevent those issues from happening. Because we have multiple providers, we have infrastructure code, and we use Terraform. Terraform provides some testing tools where you can mock those providers. Was that a provider-specific issue that happened only when it was applied on the provider, or could it have been avoided by testing our infrastructure code beforehand? Are you using those test frameworks that IAC's providing or not?
I'll start with why not we're using them. And the answer is very clear. The client wants something very fast, and you need to go with the MVP. Always you need to go with the MVP. And that's why the testing frameworks we implement towards the end of the project. when you have time. The client has specific releases. He wants to see production in release 2, 3, 7, whatever. So you need to proceed with everything, and you don't have time to make the perfect product. And that's the problem, right? You don't have enough time. So that's an issue. We're testing our code, right? So you have a plan. You have dev environment where you can test this. But these policies that I'm talking to you about were at account level. So once you recreated those, you've affected everything. So that's why we need another account. They affected all the compartments, so all the other sub-environments. So we need another account in order to test these in the future. So that's how we're mitigating this. And there was no way. So in the official documentation from that cloud provider, it says that you need these policies. But this doesn't state anywhere that the control plane will be scaled down if you don't have them. So I get scaling down the nodes, right? Because I can have afterwards control and I can scale them back up. Okay, I did this. Thank you for helping. Let me scale them back up. But the control plane, you have, it's a black box, right? You don't have any access to it. And the only thing that we could see is that Kube API wasn't, we weren't able to reach Kube API, and that the metrics and the UI from that cloud provider were blank. Everything was blank. We're like, what's happening? What happened over here? So it's very hard to prevent that. Because if it's specific, yes, you test it. Dev, test, sit, UAT, whatever. You go through every environment with these changes. But if it's a policy, a dynamic group, it's global. So now we know. Thanks. The tool, let's say. No. It can happen, but with small parts of the project, right? Not with the entire architecture. If you're changing the entire architecture, then that's a problem. You haven't planned correctly, the solution designs weren't created correctly, right? They were approved, why were they approved? So that's a big problem. But it happened with, it happens. It happens with tools that you design first. You want to use, let's say, whatever tool X, and you find out during the implementation that it has a problem with Istio, let's say, with the service mesh. It can't work on it because it's a bug that can't be fixed and has been found 2 weeks ago. We have this problem right now. And you need to use another tool for that. You need to find a similar product. It can happen, but with small tools. If there's a big change, that's a bigger problem because it delays everything. So if you're just starting out your career as a platform engineer, you definitely need to choose one. So from each category, from cloud provider, start with one, configuration management one, IAC one, so on and so forth. This will give you the starting point, so the base for everything you're going to do a bit later. And that means you're going to understand how a cloud provider works, what infrastructure as code is, and how configuration management can help you automate things if you have servers, and so on and so forth. So you need to start with one. You can be an SME, so don't get me wrong, that's a very good thing. You can be an SME in one cloud provider or one tool. But you need to understand that from then on, from that tool on, you need to move on in the future as well. So you need to try to understand what are the differences between Google Cloud and AWS. What are the advantages? Because you might, the DevOps engineer needs also to be part-time architect, in my opinion. So you need to understand everything you're doing and suggest to the client. This isn't, you shouldn't be using AWS here, right? You have, I don't know, you're developing in C#. You have a lot of Windows servers. Why not go with Azure? Let's investigate that possibility as well. So You get me. You need to understand what the client needs and propose the best solution. And if the client is, I don't know, wants something in particular, try to tell them this will help you or it will not. That's my opinion. Yeah.
On the same note, are you still told you have free time to embrace the change and deliver things while maintaining a work-life balance?
So that's why I said for each and every category, you don't need to learn all the tools, right? You need to learn what configuration management is, what infrastructure as code is, what pipelines are and how they work. Because let's take pipelines. Pipelines do basically the same thing. It's just different syntax. It may be Groovy for Jenkins, it may be YAML for a lot of them, but they basically do the same thing. It's the different syntax. So you're not trying to understand everything. You're getting the basics, and you're open to embracing whatever other tool comes to you, be it GitLab, be it BuildKite, be it whatever. So it's not learning everything, understanding the basics, having that foundation. And you need work-life balance so as not to be tired and make changes in prod. Any lessons that maybe you have learned and that I have missed?
Yes, about the work-life balance, I guess it should be more life, less balance for work.
Yep. I agree.
So try to live more and work less. Should replace the Swedish.
Thank you for sharing. Anyone else?
Regarding the new AI stuff, you are obviously very curious, and how do you keep up with those changes, finding out?
I would say medium.com helps. So I don't want to tell you to subscribe to Medium, but trying to, I don't know, follow certain people you definitely have in the industry. There's someone you like, right? There's someone who's writing articles that are very interesting, and follow them. Try to understand what they're doing. Try to understand and follow big companies. How are they coming to help you, right? So major companies are coming with certifications, with courses. There are small companies. There's a small company I read about. It's doing an AI bot for Slack that can help you provision infrastructure in major cloud providers. You need to be aware. It doesn't mean it's the right solution for you, but you need to look for it, right? Once you find out there's something interesting, and if you're following, let's say, an engineer that's very good, try to dive into that one. So that's what I'm doing. And trying to understand what's next, what's coming, right? Okay, certifications, AI certifications, but what does it mean, AI fundamentals? Does that help you as a DevOps engineer or front-end, back-end, whatever you are? And during the open mics with the team, with the guild, the capability inside the company. So keep sharing the knowledge, and encourage other people to share as well, right? Because they have other experiences, they're following other engineers, other architects, or whatever. So try to share. Open mic sessions are the best, in my opinion. And don't make them mandatory. If you make them mandatory, you might lose some people. But if they're optional, and if they find out that the content and the information that's shared over there is good, people will come. Newsletters. Yes, you can subscribe to newsletters. That's another thing, but it depends. There's something for everyone, right?
I have a suggestion as well with these on graph cards, for example.
Sorry, what?
Zone has some graph cards.
Yeah.
It's like 5 minutes of reading of
Exactly. Tidbits.
whatever break you have.
Yeah.
They're good to read, and they're an awesome piece of content.
And they're always updated, right? They're always telling you what's new, what's most used. Yeah.
Get your technical grants.
Yeah. And then you can dive deeper if you have a subject which is interesting. Dive deep into that one. Yes, please.
You as a consultant, you work a lot with the teams from your customers, right?
Yeah.
How do you mitigate, or did you encounter the situation where one of the teams refused to come out and play?
Yes. Yes, it can happen. You need to understand why they don't come out and play, right? What's the reason behind it? Is it a political issue? Is it they don't have time for it? What's the problem? So communication is the first thing, the first mitigation. You need to go, talk to each and everyone, see how open they are, and if they're not, try to understand why not. That's my opinion, right? Because there can be several reasons. There can be a lot, and you can't know them all. And every client is different, every team is different. So try to understand why they're not playing ball. And if you can, try and help them. Try and show them, okay, if you come to the open mic sessions, look, we have this. We are sharing knowledge. You're going to get some more knowledge from the Deloitte consultants and not just the code that we deliver. And we can learn together, grow together. You can understand what we're doing, because maybe I'm doing something that you can reuse, right? A template, a module. This is beneficial to you. It's less work, and we're all working towards the same goal anyway, right? Because that's why we're on the same project. Thank you. Thank you.